Looking for NFL football? Stop right here. You found your home for weekly NFL talk and fantasy football. Coming to you live from the BackupPunter.com. This is the Backup Punter Podcast. Now, here's your host, the man who thinks fullbacks win championships, Keegan Matheson.
What's up? Welcome back to the show. This is Keegan Matheson here with you for episode number 19 of the Backup Punter Podcast. This week, we are finally going to get into some quarterback rankings. Fantasy football rankings are going to start this week. We'll do quarterbacks now, and over the next few weeks, we'll go through wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. We're finally going to rank some things, and fantasy football is just around the corner. Just like real football, we can talk about that too if you'd like. It all started off last night. The Hall of Fame game between the Steelers and the Vikings. It was a quarter of good football, followed by a few quarters of undrafted free agents missing assignments and dropping passes, but it's all the same to me. And this offseason, more than any other offseason, I think, has been really insufferable as a football fan. Almost to the point where my excitement for football to return didn't really kick in until I saw live snaps last night. Usually even the training camp stories get me going, they get me excited, but between Deflategate, between off-field incidents, issues, situations, whatever word we're going to throw at those things now, between all of that and on top of that, the coverage that has come with this training camp season, I think has been one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen outside of Deflategate. We're getting quarterback ratings for players in training camp, running set routes where they're not allowed to be rushed. We're getting reports that Marcus Mariota hasn't thrown an interception in training. And we're taking these seriously, and NFL Network's giving us 48 hours a day of live coverage from training camp, breaking down each and every play, each and every blocking assignment, what type of meals the players are eating, who sits next to each other at the cafeteria, how the players tie their shoes, and so on. And at a certain point, you need an off-season. There should be a rule where there's 1 month where you're not allowed to cover the NFL. Everyone shuts down, and I think that would get people a lot more excited for the season. But last night, that helped. Seeing real football come back, that's what it's all about. Seeing real tackles, real stats against real teams in real pads, it's a sweet time. So as always, the Backup Punter Podcast, it's brought to you by the good people at Dynasty Sports Empire, Fantasy Football, and the Dynasty Sports Empire Podcast Network. So check them out today at DSE_football on Twitter. That's DSE_football. Get yourself involved in a Dynasty Fantasy Startup Football League today. They start at $50. It's the most fun you can have playing fantasy football. It is the realest form of fantasy. So check them out. Tell them I sent you. That's Dynasty Sports Empire. And you can find me on Twitter at The Backup Punter. Visit the website at thebackupppunter.com. Check it out on Facebook. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on iTunes. You can also subscribe on YouTube. It's up to you. I'm just happy you're here. I'm happy you're following along. Now, the big news of the week in terms of fantasy football, I feel kind of responsible for it. We had a question last night from a listener of the podcast, Ryan Andrews, asking about Alfred Blue behind Arian Foster. Is he worth a fantasy football flyer? Maybe a late round look? Maybe are the Texans going to ease the workload off Arian Foster because he's been injured? And I said, no. Arian Foster, he missed a few games last year and he was still a top guy. About 5 minutes after we recorded that show, Arian Foster injured. He's going to have to undergo surgery on his groin. The groin muscle was torn off the bone, which is just great sounding in itself. I'm sorry for the image. But it looks like he's going to be out in the ballpark of half the season, maybe a bit more than half the season. We're not sure yet. We'll probably learn over the next couple of weeks. Now, Arian Foster is a top 6 fantasy running back. And before we even get into the fallout of this, This injury is exactly why you do not draft early in August. I know a lot of people get fantasy football crazy at this time of year. They just want football to come back so quickly that they say, come on, guys, let's just do our draft now. You know, this'll this will really separate the good drafters from the bad drafters. We can go at this before training camp even happens. Well, you get an injury like this, and if you're someone who drafted Arian Foster, especially if you're someone who used a keeper selection on Arian Foster, which you probably did, now you're screwed. And that sucks. And that's why I always wait till last few days of August, first few days of September to draft, regardless of the league, regardless of the style. You've got to. Because this happens. Along with everyone being in the best shape of their life, the only other guarantee is unnecessary injuries in training camp. So, obviously, this brings us to Alfred Blue. Now, he averaged 3.1 yards a carry last year. And more importantly than anything, really, is those 3.1 yards per carry didn't look that great. He did not look dynamic. He did not look to have the patience, the vision that you see from an Arian Foster. And I absolutely believe he can make a jump into year number 2. You've seen it from Le'Veon Bell go from pretty average to one of the best running backs in football. But I'm not going to expect that from Alfred Blue. Now, you've also got Chris Polk in the situation there, formerly from Philadelphia. I see him as more of a goal line back, a short yardage guy. If you're looking for fantasy football, he might steal you the odd 6 points with a touchdown and 1 yard. But I don't think either of these guys are what you're looking for. Now, the Texans had Pierre Thomas in for a visit, and I liked that fit. He's not special, but he's extremely solid. I think he's a little bit underrated as a runner just because of how good he is as a pass catcher. People just tend to look at that too strongly. Now, the line from Pierre Thomas's agent was that the two could not agree to terms. And that's a little strange to me. That signifies to me that it was a money issue. And if you're the Texans right now, do you really want to make this about money? I'm not saying to open up the bank and give someone $8 million to be your running back for a year, but if it's the difference between a million, you got to patch this up. Says the guy with extra millions, of course. Now, my opinion on this is that the Texans should be exploring the trade market a little bit more. Running back is one position in the NFL that, in my opinion, has an equal number of starting caliber backs to starting jobs. Unlike quarterback, for example, where people like Matt Castle and Josh McCown could start, despite not being starting caliber. I think there's at least 32 starting caliber running backs in this league. Look around the league at a team like, say, the Seattle Seahawks. If I'm the Texans today, I'm calling the Seahawks and I'm saying, are you planning on keeping Christine Michael? Because I don't think the Seahawks will be. And I think they'd be happy to get a 6th round pick for him, maybe a 7th. Something like that later in camp. And there will be a lot of situations like that. Not many teams will want to give up their number 2 running back because it's not really a number 2 anymore. It's kind of a 1B around this league, and teams expect to use their backup running back not just to spell off the starter, but to actually impact a game. But the talent at running back in that number 3, number 4 role on the depth chart around this league is still very exciting. Lots of young players, and you see it with Arian Foster himself. The Texans got one of the league's best running backs as an undrafted free agent. So hey, maybe somebody does emerge. Someone runs out of the cracks and saves the season here. Now, what about Arian Foster as a fantasy option himself? This is a move that a confident owner can make. Kind of like the people who picked up Adrian Peterson last year and held on to him, hoping that suspension would drop. Or the people that really rode it out with Josh Gordon. Now, both of those people ended up failing with that attempt, but it wasn't a stupid attempt. If your roster can support it, why not do it? Because Arian Foster could win you your league down the stretch. Now, don't hold on to Arian Foster too long, and don't even think about drafting him high at all. I'm talking 9th, 10th round maybe, in that region if you're in a 12-team standard league. But if he's going to come back in week 8 or 9, that gives him week 9 or 10 or 11 to build up to full starting reps, if that is what they choose to do, if they're still in a playoff race. And then by week 12, 13, 14, you've basically got a top 10 running back for free. It might have cost you some points here or there throughout the season, but if you can get to that point, it will be a big help. So that's only something for the gambler in your league. If that's you, go for it. And let me know how it does go. Because that'll be one of the most interesting picks in any fantasy draft this year. Myself, I say it every week, this is just a situation that I'd rather avoid. there's not always a fantasy football answer. And I think that's something that really annoys me with fantasy football coverage. If Aaron Rodgers was to be injured today, there would be someone out there saying that Scott Tolzien or Brett Hundley is now fantasy relevant. And everything has to end in an answer that has someone being fantasy relevant. Sometimes you can just look at a situation like this and say, you know what? This probably takes the Texans out of fantasy relevance at running back until Arian Foster returns. And that's okay with me. There's 31 other teams that interest me quite a bit. But when I look at Houston, I'll just say, you know what? Someone else can draft Alfred Blue a little bit too high. Go for it. If you beat me, congrats. I don't think you're going to, though, with Alfred Blue in your lineup. So that's it on Arian Foster. Keep an eye on him. I hope he does come back, because he's one of the good guys in the NFL. Now, one of the guys who isn't a good guy in the NFL, Aldon Smith of the San Francisco 49ers, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. He has been released by the team after he was charged with DUI, and there was some other charges there. I think there was a destruction of property maybe, or vandalism, something like that. And the vandalism charge stood out to me just as much as DUI. Doesn't that kind of insinuate he did something extra stupid? That he didn't just crash a car and sit there, that he did something extra? I'm not sure. My lawyer friends can call in on this one and let me know what that might mean. I feel bad for Aldon Smith because this is an issue that clearly goes beyond him being stupid. You see a lot of people with their hot takes this week. Bless the hot takes. And people aren't really seeing this issue as an issue that's as complex as it is. Aldon Smith clearly has problems that he needs to deal with, and those aren't problems that he's going to get dealt with as a member of an NFL team. On a football field making millions with 80,000 people screaming for him in the stands. People recognizing him everywhere he goes as the superstar of the local football team. That's probably not good for him right now, and it won't be good for him for a year or two. Hopefully he gets his life right and does come back, but he does not deserve to be within 1,000 miles of an NFL roster right now. If someone signs Aldon Smith this week, this month, it's going to make me sick to my stomach because I think that's the worst thing that can happen to Aldon Smith. He needs time away. He needs help. Whatever type of help it is, I don't know or care, just as long as he gets it. I'm not going to be one of these armchair psychologists that says I know the problem. I don't. But this goes deeper than just some thug who made a mistake. He is on his second, third, fourth, and fifth chance right now with the 49ers. If Aldon Smith had have been a backup, he would have been unemployed 2 or 3 years ago. Because you're good at football, you get extra chances. Nobody wants to admit that, but it's true. Football players get more chances if they are good. Aldon Smith, when he is right, when Aldon Smith is performing at peak level, he is one of the best defensive players in football. At times, he can be the best when he's really on. And I can't even imagine this offseason from the standpoint of a 49ers fan. Now, I'd never put myself through that to start with, but regardless, you've lost Patrick Willis, elite linebacker, Chris Borland, who had the potential to be a Pro Bowl linebacker. Aldon Smith now, gone. Justin Smith, one of the most underrated players in all of football, in my opinion, is gone. Look at the offensive line. Mikey Iupati, gone. Everyone is leaving San Francisco. And a lot of the time, it's not by San Francisco's choice at all. That worries me. And I feel for Jim Tomsula, the new 49ers head coach. He came into this kind of following Harbaugh, so some people liked him right out of the gate because he wasn't Harbaugh. And I don't mind Harbaugh too much. I think he's a lunatic, but Tomsula got the benefit of the doubt right away because he was this fresh new face, and then he's just had players walk out left and right. And it's too bad. Like I said last week, I don't see the 49ers doing much of anything this year, and I think Colin Kaepernick's going to get exposed. And Aldon Smith is related to that. A healthy, correct Aldon Smith will give you 15 sacks and create some turnovers. So this team is hurting right now. Very much. But that's enough with bad news. Is there such thing as good news in the NFL anymore? I really don't think so. It's one of the many reasons I'm struggling with the league right now, with the shield, with the untouchable great sporting force of America, the NFL. I want to get in to some fantasy football rankings because I'm sick of talking about injuries and people who made stupid choices. Maybe next week we won't have to. But let's get in to our quarterback rankings, and I've decided to do a top 15 list. And I decided 15 because that will cover all of the quarterbacks that should leave the board in a standard 12-team draft, of course in a 10-team as well, or in a 14 or 16-team league. These should be the guys leaving the board. I'm going to go 1 right through 15, and then I'll give you a few flyers at the end, just in case you're someone who likes to wait on a quarterback. And in terms of draft strategy with quarterback, a lot of people are hard-nosed about, nope, you can't take one early. They laugh at you if you take one in the first round. Fantasy football is turning into such a snob event. It drives me a bit nuts. I don't care where you get value for a quarterback. If you get value, draft them, that's great. I'm not going to take one in the first round by any means. But there's a lot of opportunities to get value at quarterback. And quarterback's a position that in a lot of your leagues, there will be a run on them. Someone will take Andrew Luck, so someone else will panic and take Aaron Rodgers. Then, a little bit later, someone's going to take a Wilson, a Roethlisberger, a Peyton Manning. And that's going to trigger 3 or 4 more of your teammates, your league mates, to grab a quarterback of their own. There's going to be a few runs on quarterbacks in your draft. Make sure you're closer to the start of a run than the end of a run, I think. You don't want to follow someone else. So let's get started. My number 1 quarterback, entering 2015 fantasy football, just by a hair, is Andrew Luck. I read some great articles over the past week about Andrew Luck really working on his interceptions, his ball security. And I don't think that means anything, him saying that, and I don't think he's going to go out and throw 4 interceptions this year. I think he's still going to have 12, 14, 16 interceptions. But even if he just cuts down a bit on those interceptions, just a bit, then he's going to be fine. I think that Frank Gore is going to help him a lot in the backfield, both running the football and protecting him as a pass blocker, which Frank Gore doesn't get enough love for. I think his wide receiver group is fantastic. I think Andre Johnson won't be very good fantasy-wise, but he'll be extremely valuable in terms of real football, which does matter. T.Y. Hilton will stretch the field for him. He's got 2 tight ends that can make plays. I don't think he's ever going to be without an option. But the number 1 reason I have Luck ahead of Rodgers, it's his defense. I don't think that the Colts defense is going to be that good this year. I don't think they're going to be bad by any means. I think they're going to be a middle-of-the-road defensive unit that has their weeks. But I don't see the Colts running away 30-0 in the first half all that often. I think Andrew Luck's going to have to pass for a large percentage of his games. That is valuable for quarterbacks. So I've got him number 1. Coming number 2, of course, is Aaron Rodgers. Now, if fantasy football ever graded out efficiency and awarded points for efficiency, Aaron Rodgers would be number 1 far and away. But again, this is the difference between real football and fake football that we play in our computers and care a little bit more about, strangely. I see Aaron Rodgers having another very low interception total this year. I'm talking around 5 interceptions, if that. But I think there's going to be a lot of times where he's taken out of the game. Green Bay's defense is not elite. It's not even very good. I think it's another middle-of-the-road defense. But they're an opportunistic group, and I think they'll create some turnovers. We saw it last year. Green Bay got out to, time after time, a 20, 30-point lead. And Aaron Rodgers was taken out of the game largely, especially in scoring situations, which is important. Eddie Lacy is going to have a little bit bigger role this year. That should eat a couple points into Rodgers, nothing serious. But still, if you get Rodgers, you've got an elite number 1 quarterback. Him or Luck, you can flip-flop them all day. I don't care. I like them both as a number 1. Number 3, I'm going to go against what most people are saying here. I don't have Russell Wilson as my number 3. I have Ben Roethlisberger here. I was hesitant to list Ben Roethlisberger as the number 3 quarterback on my fantasy football rankings because last year was kind of an outlier for Big Ben. Before last year, he was more of a slug-it-out quarterback that didn't put up incredible fantasy numbers, but he made plays, and he was one of these guys who you'd rather have on your real football team than your fantasy football team. Last year, that all changed. Pushed 5,000 yards, had some of the biggest weeks that I can remember in fantasy football. We're talking some weeks that were up around 50 points, that if you had Ben Roethlisberger, there was only a 1% chance you lost that week, as long as you started someone at your other positions. I don't expect him to do that good every week, but when I look at this roster, it's encouraging. The first 2 weeks, he's going to throw the football a lot without Le'Veon Bell. When Le'Veon Bell is back, he's going to throw the football a lot to Le'Veon Bell. Those are free yards, and I love those. He's also got a great wide receiving core now. Sammy Coates, even as the number 4, he flashed a little bit in the Hall of Fame game, although he's extremely raw, long road for him. But you're looking at Martavis Bryant on the outside, who is the hype machine of the preseason. You're looking at Antonio Brown, also, who is the number 1 receiver in fantasy football. He's got great options there. I think they are going to throw the ball a lot. But again, when you're drafting a quarterback, one of the most important traits is his defense. I don't think the Steelers are going to shut a lot of teams down. I think they're going to be improved this year. I think they're going to surprise some teams because they are now fast, which is something they haven't been in a lot of years. But I think they're going to be a weak unit compared to the rest of the league, and Big Ben is going to throw the football very often. Now, I do have Russell Wilson at number 4 here, and that's not a knock on the guy. People always talk about these quarterback rankings, and they see a guy at 5 or 6, and they think, oh my God, how dare you say something so cruel about Russell Wilson, about Peyton Manning. If he's the 4th best quarterback in the league this year, I think that's quite a compliment. Russell Wilson, of course the issue with him, you don't need me to tell you, it's that he relies on the rushing yards a little bit. He relies on Marshawn Lynch's performance a little bit. If Lynch is injured, or if he starts to break down a bit because he's had a hard career, a very hard career on his body, how does Russell Wilson react? I think he does just fine. And he's also got Jimmy Graham in the mix. That's going to help. His receiving core should take a small step forward. Tyler Lockett, I think, will be a big help. I think he starts by the end of the year. My worry, again, is the offensive line there. But I think the Seahawks are a great team, and great teams find ways to work around that. So I've got him at number 4. You're going to need those rushing yards from him, and you're going to have to hope for some rushing touchdowns, or at least a bump in his passing touchdowns. Number 5, I have Cam Newton. I'm expecting a big year from Cam Newton. Turn off the podcast if you're in a league with me, but I would like to draft Cam Newton. And I will say that publicly. I would like to draft you, Cam Newton. I am seeing big things from him if he is healthy. A lot of that depends on his tackle situation, which, even to call it a situation, is too high a compliment at this moment. But if he stays upright, I think he's going to have a big year throwing it to Greg Olsen, throwing it to Kelvin Benjamin. I don't know about Devin Funchess yet. I still don't. But I think if Jonathan Stewart can get things going in the ground game, Cameron Artis-Payne can help out there, Mike Tolbert, I think Cam Newton has a chance to give you top 5 fantasy scoring. He's also going to have those rushing touchdowns, which I hope Jonathan Stewart doesn't steal too many of. I think his passing is going to improve this year, and I think he's going to be more efficient with the football. I do like Cam Newton. I don't think the big contract is going to slow him down whatsoever. If they can get some 3rd and 4th receivers in there performing as well, I think the sky's the limit for him. He's never going to have that rookie year again on the ground, but even if he doesn't score a rushing touchdown, just those extra 3-4 points a game from rushing yards, that is so valuable. And that's the stuff that puts you over the edge. Instead of losing by a couple, you win by a couple. Number 6, I have Drew Brees. A lot of people are low on Drew Brees this season. What I suggest you do is go to Pro Football Reference, Roto World, NFL.com, wherever you go for your stats, and look at his stats last year, because they weren't that bad. he got dragged down with the Saints as a whole because, they just had a poor year overall. Drew Brees' stats were not that bad. They weren't great by any means, and he didn't look very good. He wasn't a flashy quarterback out there wowing everyone, but just kind of hitting the wall statistically. But still. Yes, he's lost Jimmy Graham. Yes, he's lost Kenny Stills, but he gets back Brandon Cooks. I believe in Marquez Colston. I believe in CJ Spiller. I believe in Mark Ingram. And I believe in Sean Payton and Drew Brees working together to make this happen. People are looking at this Saints offense like it is a CFL team, like it's an XFL team. Look at what the New England Patriots do every year. They take a lot of pieces that don't fit that well together, and they make it happen. And they make it look intelligent. Sean Payton's totally capable of doing that, and I trust they will. I think Drew Brees is going to have another big season. Again, because the defense is not that great. They're going to be throwing all game long, and I think they play much better at home. Down at number 7. It hurts me to do it, but I've got Peyton Manning at number 7. And it hurts me for 2 reasons. Number 1, I've spent the majority of my life with Peyton Manning as a number 1 fantasy quarterback. Number 2, it hurts me because I kind of want to have him lower. I'm not drafting Peyton Manning in a fantasy draft this year. I will not. Even if I get great value, he's just one of those players that I don't want it to be my problem. I expect the Denver Broncos to run the football a lot more this year. And I still expect Peyton Manning to be very good. I'm not one of these clowns who thinks he's going to fall off a cliff and throw for 5 yards. This is Peyton Manning. He can play 5 more years and still be a very good starting caliber quarterback. But I don't think the counting stats are going to be there as much as they have been in recent years. And what worries me most of all is how he's going to perform come playoff time in your league. Do not forget that. If he gives you 5, 6, 8, 10 good weeks out of the gate, fantastic. You're going to cruise into your playoffs, and then comes week 12, 13, 14, 15. Peyton slows down a bit. They start to run the ball a bit more in cold weather to save him for the playoffs, and he throws up an 11-point game, and you lose your league. Don't let that happen to you unless you're very confident that he can play all season long at a high level. I think his peak level this year, his peak performance, can still be top 5, even top 3. But his floor, the floor of his fantasy potential, it scares me. Number 8, I've got Matt Ryan, who has been flirting with becoming a top 5 fantasy QB for, it seems like 100 years now. He's got Roddy White, who is still very good. He's got Julio Jones, top 3 receiver in the NFL. He's going to have a better run game. The Falcons are going to have a defense that is good enough to give him the ball, but not good enough to shut out other teams by any means. So he's in a nice little groove of a situation there in Atlanta. In terms of on-field quarterback play, I'll take Matt Ryan over a lot of people in this league. I'd probably take him right now over Peyton Manning even. I don't think he's going to have enough of those 300-yard, 4-touchdown Trump games to really be a top 5 guy, but wouldn't surprise me if he climbs up and he's a number 6 or 7. I've got him ranked number 8. Number 9, Tony Romo. Now, Tony Romo is a fantasy option that has always seemed a bit strange to me. I see him ranked highly every year, but when you look back, go back through your own fantasy league or through NFL.com, anything like that, look at the past 4, 5, 6 fantasy seasons. He is consistently a top 10 quarterback. This year, is he going to slow down a bit with injuries and age? Maybe. But he doesn't have DeMarco Murray there rushing for all the yardage that he did. He's going to have to throw the football a bit more to Des Bryant, to Jason Witten, to whoever they find to complement Des Bryant and Jason Witten. Romo's going to have to carry that team. I don't think the defense is going to be much better. I don't think they're going to be much worse. It's not the most exciting opinion for me to take, just saying they're going to be kind of the same, but that's what I think. So Romo is going to have a lot of opportunities to put up big weeks, and I think he's going to have a very comfortable floor. I don't see him having any of these 11, 12-point weeks. I really don't. Next, at number 10, to round out the top 10, Eli Manning. This is a name that I've ranked higher than I thought I would 4 or 5 months ago. He is going to have a very good group of receivers if Victor Cruz is healthy. I was not confident in Victor Cruz's ability to come back at full health, but reports are encouraging so far. We'll keep an eye on that. He is also going to have Larry Donnell at tight end, big red zone target. Ruben Randall, very good receiver himself. Odell Beckham Jr., diva, but a good receiver. Out of the backfield, he'll have Vereen, Jennings, Andre Williams. That's a good running game. If that offensive line can be even decent, it doesn't need to be good, just decent, then I think Eli Manning can easily be a top 10 quarterback. He came on strong last year. I think his second year in this offensive system is really, really going to be a jump for him. Watch out for the Giants this year. This is one of those years where nobody really cares about them, and they could probably come out of nowhere and do something with a wild card berth. Number 11, I have Ryan Tannehill. Now, anyone who listens to this podcast knows that I'm high on Ryan Tannehill. What I'm not high on is his offensive line. That really worries me, especially at this point in his development when he's really ready to take that one big step. But if you look at his weapons, he's got Devontae Parker, who has been forgotten about. Very strangely, I still think he's going to win some people some leagues at wide receiver. Greg Jennings, who will catch the odd ball. Kenny Stills out there. Jarvis Landry in the slot, who's a quarterback's best friend. Jordan Cameron, who I believe in at tight end. And Lamar Miller, who I believe in at running back. Who I really believe in this year at running back. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to save himself with his legs. That's going to keep him as a top 12 quarterback, getting that 20-30 rush yards a game maybe wherever he can. And I think he's going to produce more in the red zone this year with the depth he has in terms of his offensive weapons. It would not surprise me to see him climb up to be a 6th or 7th best quarterback fantasy-wise. But until that offensive line figures it out, I have him at number 11. Number 12, Matt Stafford in Detroit. He killed a fantasy team for me last year. He sure did. But this is still probably the most raw talent in a right arm that you'll find in the NFL. Calvin Johnson is still okay. He's going to have another couple big years. Golden Tate. If Eric Ebron can do anything this year, Amir Abdullah can really electrify that run game, Detroit's going to be good. And since their defense won't be as shut down as it was last year, Stafford's going to have to throw the football. I think Stafford can be a nice back-end option for you. And he will have some high-usage weeks. Number 13, Phillip Rivers, a guy who does not get enough love. I would be comfortable with Phillip Rivers, as my starting quarterback, at least for the first half of the season. I expect he might trail off a bit towards the end, but especially with Melvin Gordon there, Danny Woodhead back, Keenan Allen, I'm expecting big things from him. I think Phillip Rivers has a very good start to the season. He won't lose you any games, I don't think. There's going to be high usage with him as well. Number 14, Tom Brady. There you are, Tom Brady at number 14. This is another pick that's getting too much discussion just because people need to force the issue with fantasy football. Frankly, I don't give a damn if Tom Brady is drafted. I don't think he's going to win you a league or lose you a league. In terms of fantasy football, he's a much worse player than he is in real football. Another one of those examples. He can easily come in, get you your 18, 20, 21 points a week if you just want a guy that's going to take care of the quarterback position. I don't think he's going to win you a week with 35 or 40, but you don't always need that. He's a very safe option. But I think someone in your league is going to overdraft him because there's going to be a Patriots fan in your league. Hashtag free Brady. And they're going to draft the guy. And number 15, because I couldn't resist, Teddy Bridgewater. He looked very good in his first preseason action. With Adrian Peterson behind him, I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to be very efficient, which will help make up for how little usage he has when the Vikings are ahead in games, which might be often this year. They've got a very good defense. Don't forget that. But I like Teddy Bridgewater as the 15th quarterback. I think he could even improve on that. He's kind of a trendy breakout pick. I'm not going to attach the word breakout to him, but I think he's going to do just fine, which is good enough. So that's the top 15. Let's run through again. Luck, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, Wilson, Newton, Peyton Manning, Ryan, Romo, Eli Manning, Tannehill at 11, Stafford, Rivers, Brady, and Bridgewater at 15. Now, how about a few flyers? If you're in a really big league, or if you're someone who drafts Tom Brady late and you need a guy for 4 weeks. Or you draft Teddy Bridgewater and you think, oh, I'm not sure. I better have a backup in place. Sam Bradford's an obvious choice here. If he clicks with Philadelphia, there's top 10 quarterback potential there. If he clicks. And really, isn't health the only concern right now? Because I trust Sam Bradford if he's healthy. And if he's confident in his knee and he's not playing scared looking down at tacklers. I'd like to take a 15th round flyer on Sam Bradford if I don't get an elite quarterback. Call me crazy, but Jay Cutler, if he can even kind of settle down the interceptions, I think he's going to have a lot of weapons to throw to. I think he's going to have to throw the football a ton. He's not a guy I want as my starting quarterback, I don't think, unless I'm in a very deep league or a 2 QB league. But he's going to get you through a week on a bye week, an injury. Don't forget about him. People scoff at Cutler. He's fine. If you're just looking for counting stats, he should give you an okay week if you pick the right week. And another guy I will consider in round 15 is Marcus Mariota, because he has such good preseason stats. No, but it's because I do believe in him week 1 and week 2, which I can't say for guys like Jameis Winston or other young quarterbacks. I think Mariota is going to fit into this system well. I think he has a big week opening night against the Buccaneers. I do. And he's a guy, again, if I get Rivers, Brady, Bridgewater, Stafford, I would not mind taking Mariota in that last round and just sitting him there. Maybe he can give you production that's similar to a Ryan Tannehill, where you get that 30, 40 yards rushing, the odd touchdown on the ground, and then you hope for, 14 or 15 points through the air and get up to your 20, 24 on the ground. He's someone that I will have an eye on. So those are my flyers: Bradford, Cutler, and Mariota. So that's it for the quarterback rankings. Fantasy football top 15 this week. Next week, I think we'll come back and we'll do running backs. Running back rankings are the most enjoyable, I think. And then after that, we'll do our wide receivers and tight ends. With running backs, I'm looking forward to getting into that because you have running back battles. Is it going to be Isaiah Crowell or Duke Johnson? Is it going to be Joseph Randle or Darren McFadden? Or Leach Seastrunk? Maybe. There's battles all over this league. And unlike quarterbacks, when you look at running backs, you have to consider how often they play. Are you getting an 80% guy or a 65% guy? And with running backs, you have to be especially heartless. A crappy running back that gets 30 touches a game is more valuable than a very, very good running back who gets 20. So we'll get into that next week. Now, as always, you can subscribe to the show. Subscribe on iTunes. Give it a nice 5-star rating. I promise I'll be your friend if you do that. Check it out on YouTube as well, where you can subscribe. You'll get sent the video each and every week. And I also put it up on thebackupunter.com after each show. But if you subscribe, you'll get it usually about a day early because it takes me a little bit to get things up on the website there lately. But coming forward on the website, you will see these fantasy football rankings typed out in text if you are someone who likes to read words. So check that out. Follow me on Twitter at @thebackupunter. Like the page on Facebook by the same name. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me for episode 19. Check out the 18 before it if you like, and if you have a really boring day ahead of you. But I'll be back next week for the anniversary, number 20, talking running backs. My name's Keegan Matheson, signing off from the Backup Punter Podcast, and as always, I hope all of your punts in life stop on the 1-yard line. Let's talk next week.